Okay, so we are continuing the Ghostbusters train with the sequel to the original movie Ghostbusters 2, so let's dive right into it. Now this movie follows the events of the first movie, and this one definitely is not widely praised or well received as the first movie. Rewatching it now, I'll be honest, it's not as great as the first movie. Just some plot threads and some decisions with certain character choices in terms of like their personality and their traits didn't really work for me whatsoever. But we'll kick things off here when it comes to Ghostbusters. So if you are new to the channel, we're reviewing all the Ghostbusters movies in the build up to Frozen Empire, and at the end of that we're going to be doing a tier ranking video for those movies. So if you like that type of stuff, do consider hitting that subscribe button. Plenty of content coming out your way, so subscribe, like, hit that notification bell, all that YouTube stuff. But we're going to kick things off with Ghostbusters 2 because we come to find out that this movie takes place 5 years after the events of the first movie. So we're opening up with Dana as she's pushing a stroller. We come to see that she has a baby. First initial viewing, you're assuming that it's with Peter, but we come to find out later what's going on with that. But she's just walking around the city pushing the stroller. She bumps into her superintendent who's talking about fixing the radiator, only for her stroller to go on a stroll, no pun intended there. So you see the stroller diving around, dodging different things, different activities, maneuvering around cars and people, and eventually stopping right in front of a bus, which then leads to, again, the iconic intro, the iconic song that you get from Ghostbusters. And with this sequence, you just sort of get to know where the characters are now after the events of the first movie. So again, this is 5 years after the first movie. So Ghostbusters are no longer in business. We come to see a birthday party going on. So we see that Winston and Ray are now celebrating or doing kids' birthday parties, even though they want He-Man rather than the Ghostbusters. So no matter how many times they sing in the song, they're yelling for He-Man. We also see Egon doing some very dodgy marriage counseling, putting these people in a room for hours and hours with no end sight in near. So you see these Ghostbusters doing some dodgy experiments with Peter in the first movie, Egon in the second movie. That's when Dana, so we come to find out that they still keep in touch. So Dana is asking Egon to check out her baby because of the whole situation with the stroller going off on its own. And that's where we sort of understand that this isn't Peter's child. So apparently her and Peter broke off very early on after the first movie. So she actually got married to somebody else, and then that didn't also work out, so she's kind of like a single mother here, but she hasn't really like spoken to Peter or like kept in touch with him or anything like that. And that's where we cut to see what Peter's going on, Bill Murray's character. So with him, he's apparently a TV host talking to these sidekicks where they're apparently confirming it's going to be the end of the world on New Year's, that kind of stuff, which basically foreshadowing what's going to happen in the movie. But Bill Murray bringing up some great points in terms of like, one of them, why would he be promoting a book, having the sales, wanting to get all the money from the book sales if he's promoting the world is going to end on New Year's? So clever thinking there from Peter. And so that's basically just the opening sequence where we come to find out where each character is up to. So Peter actually goes and meets up with Ray, meets up with Egon, where he actually finds out that they're up to something, only to discover that they are investigating Dana's baby, which we come to find out his name is Oscar. So all three of them end up going into Dana's house while Egon and Ray are searching the room, searching the crib, searching like all the toys to check on like paranormal or extra normal activities, whatever you want to call it. We sort of get like a little bit of details in terms of what happened between Peter and Dana. So they're dropping some lines in terms of what happened between their relationship, why they broke up. So we get a little bit of an understanding with that, but you get to see Peter sort of building that relationship with the little baby, with Oscar. And when I mentioned in terms of character traits, I feel like Bill Murray's character trait took a real 180 turn in terms of like his personality from the first movie to this movie. It looks like with his character, it went for like a more serious, more mature approach, which I feel like worked at times, but also just didn't work at times throughout the movie itself. But as they're investigating, the investigation leads them to go outside, where they discover that something's happening underground. So they start digging a tunnel despite the police efforts of stopping them. They send Ray down. You see this river of pink slime flowing across underground. So then as they're pulling Ray up, he presses on a pipe, which causes a huge blackout throughout the city. We also get introduced to this doctor character who works in terms of like Dana's painting gallery, a place. So we get introduced to him. We also get introduced to sort of like the villain of the movie, this painting named Vigo, and he's requesting this doctor to get a baby so that he can be reborn. So because of the whole power outage, the Ghostbusters get arrested once again. They're facing court, and their lawyer lawyer, who's Louis, a fantastic addition to the cast once again. It's great to see him back into the movie. So he's their lawyer who is just clueless and has no idea what he's doing throughout the whole courtroom session. The judge seems to be very firm in terms of how he doesn't believe in ghosts and anything like that. Obviously, they lose the case because Louis as a lawyer just does not work whatsoever. So as the judge confirms that they are guilty, as he's going off on a little speech, all like the evidence that they had, like the proton packs are on the table. There's like a jar of like this pink slime, pink ooze that was in there. So that pink ooze starts bubbling away and actually explodes, releasing these two ghosts who are actually on these death row chairs. And we come to find out that they are actually the Scolari brothers, who the judge put them away, put them on death row. And so these ghosts are now running around and going after the judge, going after the other lawyer, which then causes the Ghostbusters to finally be able to catch some ghosts. So you get a sequence of the Ghostbusters, the characters, capturing the ghosts, putting them back into the trap that you see in the first movie, which then releases into like another montage of them going back into business once again, capturing different variety of ghosts throughout the movie itself. So similar beats in terms of like the first movie, but in terms of this one, in terms of like the pacing so far, does feel a lot slower than it does in the first movie. The movie right off the bat in the first movie, you get right to the action, you get right to what's going on here, but with this one, it's definitely a slow build up. And then even once again, after the whole montage, the movie slows down a bit because we're getting a bit of backstory in terms of the slime itself. So we come to find out that Ray and Egon are doing some weird stuff with the slime. We come to find out that it reacts to negative reactions along with positive reactions. So we get a better understanding of like what the ooze, what the slime does. We then cut to Dana about to take a bath with the baby, which then all of a sudden this slime tries to come out and grab the baby, which causes her to retreat, go to Peter's. And so you get this little sequence, or you get this whole part throughout the movie of like Peter and Dana trying to work back together, Peter and Dana back into the groove of things, which again I felt like really slowed the movie down a lot. So the Ghostbusters decide to go to the gallery or the museum with the paintings. They decide to start taking pictures of Vigo's the painting, because obviously that's going to be like the standout picture here. And then as they're trying to print the pictures off afterwards, these pictures start bursting into flames. We also get a little bit of backstory, a little bit of history in terms of Vigo, like the person inside the painting, what he did, how he lived for so long, how he ended up getting killed. So you understand a bit of backstory when it comes to that. But then once they're printing out the pictures bursting into flames, the door being locked behind them, so sort of like somebody trying to kill them, only for like Winston to make the save. Again with Winston too, like I feel like he wasn't in the movie enough. Same with the first movie, like I wanted more scenes with him, because when you get like the first half of the movie, when they're discovering the slime, when they're in the courtroom, Winston's not there. It's just the three original ones, but I just wish we could have got to see more with Winston as part of the group, because he does appear more in the second to third act, but not really in the first act. But they end up going into the tunnel where they first saw the pink slime, the pink ooze. So you've got this sequence where they're inside the tunnel. You see these heads coming up, basically scaring the crap out of them. This ghost train coming in there, so something's trying to prevent them from going inside the tunnels. Once they do eventually reach it, Winston falls inside the slime. Ray and Egon go and follow in, where after they come out to the other end, standing right in front of the museum, it actually discovers that this pink ooze, this pink slime, gives them these negative reactions where they start arguing, where they start having hatred towards one another, causing them to start bickering and fighting. So they go and explain this to Peter, who's actually going on a date with Dana. Again, like I said, they're having this whole setup of where Peter and Dana are going to try and go back together, which I felt like it would have just been more beneficial just to keep them as a couple rather than just break them up, only to bring them back together once again. But once they explain all of this to Peter, they end up going to see the mayor's office. So you've got mayor's right hand man, or whoever he is, not believing that the slime is the thing that's going to turn people bad, and basically having the mayor tell everybody to be good to one another, which obviously is not going to work. So they end up getting thrown into like the mental hospital or the mental asylum by the mayor's right hand man, only for the mayor to then discover that they are in a mental hospital. So he fires his right hand man because there's slime going everywhere. Meanwhile, Oscar's in the ledge, getting over his fear of heights at such an early age, only to see that the doctor, the one from like earlier in the movie, turning into some ghost, grabbing the baby and taking off so that he can bring it to Vigo. So that's all building towards like the third act, the finale of the movie itself. So she's going to the museum. She ends up getting captured while the baby is going to be taken over by Vigo. The baby starts floating. As the Ghostbusters try to arrive, they try to blast this, because the slime is literally going everywhere now. It's covering the museum. They try to blast it with a proton pack to no effect. So they discover and they decide what they're going to do is, because they need everybody to come together, they need everybody to be on the right side of history, basically, as we're getting towards midnight of New Year's Eve, as that psychic predicted earlier on in the movie. They end up going to the Statue of Liberty to basically have this Statue of Liberty come to life and just start walking around the city towards the museum. It ends up dropping them into the museum through the roof, but Vigo is out of the painting. He's powerful. He's able to blast the Ghostbusters, kind of paralyzing them. It looks like he's about to win, only for everybody outside to start singing, start coming together like they wanted in the first place, and that causes Vigo to weaken, only for them, the Ghostbusters, start shooting him back inside the painting just before briefly getting to Ray, only for them to rescue Ray once again, destroying Vigo, because they end up squirting him with like the good energy, similar with like the Doctor. They end up squirting him with good energy, beating Vigo. Louis, who gets dressed up, gets to be a Ghostbuster as well, also blasting the slime going on outside the museum. So everybody once again comes together. They end up defeating the villain and ending the movie with everybody celebrating. Similar again to like the first movie, but it just feels like with this third act wasn't as strong as the third act in the first movie. The villain really not that memorable if you're going to think about it throughout the whole franchise. The overall tone of the movie itself just went for a different approach. I appreciate that they tried it, but it's definitely so far, if we're going to be reviewing the first two movies, the weakest one out of the two. Definitely not as great as the first movie, I'll have to say, but it's still watchable, it's still enjoyable nonetheless, especially if you're going to be rewatching them back to back. While it's got similar beats, even though the first one does it better, you do get some enjoyment out of it. But for me personally, not my favorite in the franchise, so far the weakest in the franchise. But those are my thoughts. That's a breakdown of the sequel to the original Ghostbusters. I want to know your thoughts. Let me know in the comment section down below. Did you enjoy this movie? Were you a fan? Were you not a fan of it? Let me know down below. And again, if you are new to the channel, do consider hitting that subscribe button. We are going to be reviewing the Afterlife, Ghostbusters Afterlife one, the one that came out a couple of years ago. That's going to be coming out tomorrow as we're building up to Frozen Empire. So do subscribe, do keep an eye out on the channel. But thank you all so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. This is YK Reviews. Peace.